Hey everyone, so before I get into the review of Cyberdimension, I kind of want to talk about two things that bothered me that were a series standard in Cyberdimension that it changed, alright? And I ask if you seen my playthrough, I'm going to speak more on that, alright? I purposely left some things out during the playthrough so I can make this video, so please hear me out, alright? So this video is dealing with what is a normal standard when you play a Neptunia game. Well, there are two standards that you may or may not have been aware of since, it's been in the back of your mind. Before Cyberdimension, if there was a CPU that was not a villain type character like Ray, for example, they were always playable. Alright, that's number one. And number two is that if the CPUs were playable, you could play as both their normal forms and their CPU forms. Alright. Now, what did Cyberdimension change? Well, I think you guys already know. Uzume, Plutia, and Pishi were not playable in this game. And you had only 4 of the CPUs playable, and they were treated as different characters. Well, you may be asking, well, is that necessarily a problem? Well, not if they only did it for this game. Alright, let me explain. I am 100% believe that the goal of Cyberdimension was a proof of concept type game. Meaning that they would only focus on, the main 8. Like just kind of if there's a Neptunia game, for the most part, you would expect those 8 to be in there, be playable. And they wanted to show the CPU forms but not go all in, and it's a game, the CPUs can't transform in game, so they're like, okay, it's 4 goddesses online, they normally talk about the 4 goddesses, so only have the 4 goddesses in the game. And that part makes sense. All right, here's where I start to draw the line. All right, it's that they put Plutia, Pishi, and Uzume in this game when they easily could have said they could have been doing something else. So you might be asking yourself, well, okay, why is that such a big deal? I mean, they're in the game, right? Isn't that the main point? At first, I was kind of thinking that too. Like, I understand Uzume is my favorite character, and I understand my bias. So whenever I deal with anything with Uzume, I always sit to myself and think, all right, am I being fair in saying this or that about how her character was handled? I mean, she's not the star, she's not the main character of the series. That's obviously Neptune, right? And so I look back and I said, well, look, if I just take the Sonic series or the Mario series, they have plenty of characters, that are not, every character that has been playable in those series cannot be playable in every single game, because that just be too many characters. Sometimes you only need Mario or Sonic to play the game, and then other types of games, because they dive into so many different types of genres, you have a roster which they're pick, certain characters to play in the game, like Mario's tennis game or Sonic's racing game. Well, I mean, I could have just said Mario and Sonic's racing game. They both have racing games, and they both have tennis games. Anyways, the point is, that's when they pick from a roster and like, okay, so we'll pick this character, this character, this character, they'll be in the game, that's fine. So why can't the same be said for the Neptunia series? Well, I wouldn't have said this if I had been in back if you met me in Rebirth 3/Victory when I was playing that game or the previous games. But upon playing Mega Dimension, I finally got a part of the Neptunia series that I had been missing, and that's the waifu aspect of the game. Alright? Just like Uzume is my favorite character, each one of the CPUs has a fan base, alright? And a big part of the Neptunia series is not actually having them in the story. In fact, there are many people who just skip the story and, they only want the game for the fan service. And while there are some CG fan service scenes, there's also the costumes, the voice clips, playing with the character and making them die, for example. I got that. Or, having them in certain poses or things like that. Look, without saying too much, guys, Nier Automata has changed me in a little bit of ways, but it helps with this video, okay? The point is that having a character playable in the Neptunia series means so much more than others because the characters are meant to be waifus. And having your waifu just appear in the story is not enough, I would argue. I mean, look at some of the prices that the Neptunia series has for some of the costumes. they cost way more than some armor or, actual valuable things that would help you play the game. Because it's like, whoa, I mean, yeah, you can play the game, but we all know why you're really here, or, a good portion of the fan base of what they want. That's why when I try to think of, removing fan service from the series, it would alienate so many people and they probably lose sales. Well, they would lose sales, at least in the beginning. They might gain them back in a different sort of crowd. But the point is, that's a big part of the series. So when you say Uzume, Plutia, and Peachy are in the game, I'd argue they aren't really in the game. Because there are so many things with Cyberdimension, like, there are the cutscenes, the special cutscenes that were involved, and just the 3D sprites in general. I mean, if you remember, Plutia and Peachy have not even been on a next-gen console game at all. I mean, besides their sprites. They haven't had an actual 3D model, neither Plutia, Peachy, or Iris Heart, or Yellow Heart. That's a kind of a big deal. Not to mention, you have so many other games, out there that will you can literally spend money. Like, for example, if you heard of Fire Emblem Heroes, that's a game I play a lot on my second channel. It literally has where you can have a completely good experience without having, every single character. I mean, that's kind of the point. You're supposed to make a team with different characters. But they have it where, you can pay money to try to get a chance at your favorite character, and they are making so much money off of just people trying to pull different characters that they want. That makes a huge deal just to be able to play as your favorite character. And when you look at what they've done, because let's go back to Cyberdimension, right? You remember, Cyberdimension also did a series first. Noir, Blonde, and Vert were nowhere to be they weren't even mentioned in Cyberdimension. But I was okay with that because it was a game strictly about Sega consoles. They had no place in there. That's what I feel the Neptunia series should do. They can branch into so many genres where it doesn't necessarily make sense for every single character to be in that game. But, every character that is, make them playable. But I feel like the fear that they want, or they probably even experience when, selling Cyberdimension is they're like, people really wanted Noir, Blonde, and Vert, and if they weren't in there, then they weren't interested in buying the game. So what they said in this game is like, all right, let's just even though we're not going to have every character playable, let's just put them in the game, and that way we should sell more copies. But I feel like that's even worse, because then you constantly see the character, you see them in their outfits and what they would have what they could have been like, but you're constantly denied. This may be hard for some people who are fans of, Neptune, for example, to get, because, if Neptune's your favorite character, you're pretty much good. Neptune was my favorite character for the longest time till Uzume appeared, but one of the things I can point out to you is, you guys remember a big problem in Rebirth 2 that was stated was that Neptune was gone for so long. Now imagine that, a bunch of people had a problem because they're like, Neptune's not here, where's Neptune? Oh, finally we got Neptune. All right, we're good now. So if you were one of those people, then I think you can understand the character being in the game and not even being playable at all. And I further show you all how much of a big deal it was that every single character was playable, let's take a look at Rebirth 3. And Rebirth 3, the candidates were done so dirty in that game. Nepgear was a punching bag, and Uniram and Ram, they had portraits. They didn't have full sprites, they had portraits whenever they spoke, and they were barely in the game for the majority of it. But then when they came back at the end, you could finally play as them. Alright? That would have been a completely understandable reason of why, or if they were to, leave characters out, that would have been, not understandable, it would have been annoying still. But, Idea Factory was still saying, no, the principle of the thing, the CPUs are in the game, they need to be playable. Or their characters are in the story, they need to be playable. And they made the rest of the candidates playable. Alright, that's how important it was that every CPU that was in the game was playable, and then Cyberdimension broke this. So I would either them do one of two or three things. Either A, don't put them in the game at all. B, put them in the game and make them playable, obviously. Or C, sell them as DLC. Because it's pretty much been a thing to me, like if there was a character that had a sprite in the tuning series for the most part, they had a 3D, they had a 3D model somewhere, some way, shape, or form. Now, that's not a complete rule, but you'd be hard pressed to find some examples that don't fit that. So my fear is that in other games, where, let's say, you might even use only the main 4 CPUs, that they can say, all right, we don't really need to. I mean, remember, Idea Factory is a company that reuses assets all the time. If there's another type of game where they can't reuse assets and they have to remake them their own, they might go, oh, I mean, we don't really need to put everybody in the game. Let's just only have Neptune, Noir, Blonde, and Vert. That'll sell the game enough. And then have everybody else show up in the story briefly. But, they'll be off doing their own thing. Is that what you guys want? Because that's what when I was getting upset, when I saw Uzume, I was like, this is such a bogus excuse. I mean, if you want it just to be the main 4, then focus on the main 4. Don't put the other characters in the game and say, oh yeah, cool, they're in the game. That's good enough, because it's not for the Neptunia series. It would be for a lot of series, but this is a waifu type game. You need them to actually be in the game. So then might be wondering, okay, so then what's the whole deal with the CPUs, Why can't they be different characters? Well, see, here's the thing. The ironic part is that I would switch Uzume, Plutia, and Pishi with the CPUs. Meaning, I think the only purpose that the CPUs in the Cyberdimension really served was the interactions that they had, meaning their scenes. Now, why is it different for them? Because they are Neptune, Noir, Blonde, and Vert. Just an AI version. They're fake versions of Neptune, Noir, Blonde, and Vert. They're not the real ones. What was so appealing about the Neptunia characters is that they had different personalities. Treating the CPUs as different characters really makes it seem like you just have 2 Neptunes, 2 Noirs, 2 Blondes, and 2 Verts. Alright, because their CPU forms are very much a big part of them. And while that's cool for a story standpoint, I would absolutely not want that over Uzume, Plutia, or Pishi. Alright, regardless of however you may think of them, they're different characters. The CPUs aren't. And I get the reasoning why Cyberdimension did it. Don't get me wrong. It makes perfect sense. If they're trying to test the engine, they need to test CPU-like figures for different reasons. And, they want to put them in there. But my fear is that going forward, they also want to treat the CPUs as different characters, advertise them on the Steam page. And I know many of you guys may be saying, well, it wasn't hidden, they advertised the CPUs in all the, news that we saw, that the CPUs were playable, and that other characters weren't. Well, imagine a majority of people, well, I don't know, it may be a majority, it may be a minority, alright, a good portion of people, myself included, who may just be coming across the game, when it comes out, and seeing that it's at 12 playable characters and thinking, oh, okay, well, 12 playable characters, well, then there must be, all the CPUs are probably playable, that's gotta include Uzume, Plutia, and Pishi, because that's always been the case. And that's gotta include the CPU forms, or if it doesn't include the CPU forms, there's at least a good reason, because it's a game. No way they would have AIs playable over actual characters, but they did. Alright? And the thing is, if they can come up with a reason for them to do it in one game, they can come up with reasons to do it in other games. I'd much rather them do like they did in Cyberdimension, where if it makes sense for a character to be in the universe, okay, put them in there. If not, then leave them out. Like, it works for a person like Eastwar because her role has always been a supportive role. The CPUs are always meant to fight on the front lines, So anyways, the main point of this video was me trying to ask you guys, trying to get a poll and hear, what did you all think about this? Because during my playthrough, not many people talked about it for the most part, but I want to know, did you think this is an actual problem? By hearing what I said, do you agree with what I said, or do you disagree? Do you still think it's not that big of a deal? Although, to be fair, if your favorite character is Neptune, it's gonna be hard, and I know who you are. Well, unless you're not subscribed to my channel or haven't commented on my videos, then of course I don't know who you are. But there are certain individuals who, their comments on this, I'm like, I know your favorite character is Neptune. You really can't, you're gonna have a hard time convincing me that you understand where I'm coming from if your favorite character is the main character of the series. Alright? Not to say that the Neptunia series won't eventually have a game that doesn't involve Neptune, but I doubt it. Because again, the whole point of the series, it's a waifu type game. Alright, it's not like you can have a game based on Luigi or a game based on Shadow, or like it can't have games based like that because you need more of the CPU. You know what I'm saying? And they also could have done the same thing based on looking at Noir's game. Noir was the head, and she only had the other 3 CPUs, and they were thinking, we really need more of the cast. I just disagree that for a series like the Neptunia series, strictly like the Neptunia series, that it's okay for you to include the character, with their designs and everything, and not have them playable. I just think that's going to make people upset, and it doesn't fulfill that little checkbox that says this character is in the game, because they're not in the game. They're just like not in the sense of the Neptunia series, all right? Because there's so much more than just that character in the story when you say they're in the game. But of course, that's just my thoughts. Please, please, please tell me what are yours, because this was my main thing with Cyberdimension, and I really would like more of you who've been keeping silent to be honest and, speak about it. So please, post your thoughts down in the comments below, and I will see you all next time.